You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wood.
And I'm Jennifer Connor.
From Equestrian Businesswomen, and you're listening to Equestrian B2B, the podcast that brings together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and equestrians for conversations about how they build and sustain a successful business.
On today's show, we speak with Dr. Cara Wright about how to avoid burnout and employees and employers working together to create long-term job sustainability.
Dr. Cara Wright joined the professional services team at Merck Animal Health in June 2022. Her clinical practice experience spans both ambulatory and hospital-based equine practices. She has served as adjunct faculty at University of Florida for students on clinical rotations, as well as taught sessions at the Options for Animals Chiropractic School in the University of Kentucky location. While living overseas, she ran a successful equine veterinary relief practice, which allowed her work in various practice settings in the U.S. and Australia.
Outside of Merck Animal Health, Cara is active in the AAEP, serving on various committees and task forces. She is a founding member of the Sustainability in Equine Practice seminars, as well as a Decade 1 Starting Gate program facilitator. Outside of work, things that bring her joy include triathlons, coaching swimming, and wiener dogs.
Hey, Equestrian B2B podcast listeners. Ready to level up your biz?
Ride Every Stride specializes in tailoring brand identities for equestrian businesses. From logo development, essential stable accessories, and custom product branding to exclusive awards, VIP event must-haves, and chic apparel, they've got you covered.
Visit rideeverystride.com. Use code B2B15, that's B2B15, at checkout for an exclusive 15% discount.
Elevate your brand with Ride Every Stride, supporting women in business and equestrian excellence. Hi, Cara. It's so great to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This topic is one that I think is really great for everybody. And I was so fortunate to hear you speak about this at a vet meeting that I was at. So it really got me thinking, like, even though you were talking more to vets in that situation, this really can apply to everybody in business. Can we first start talking about kind of like what your background is and what your current role is?
Sure, yeah. So I currently am a professional services veterinarian at Merck Animal Health on the equine team. I was in equine private practice for a lot of years. I'm actually bad at math. I graduated in 2009 before I landed this role. So my job at Merck is a little bit of research, a little bit of education, a little bit of speaking, kind of a nice hodgepodge. And then my equine practice background, I have worked at a variety of different types of practices, from hospital referral centers to small ambulatory. And yeah, so that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. So the topic that I heard you speak on was like sustainability and burnout in the workplace. And I was just wondering, when did you start talking about that and what made you start talking about that?
Yeah. So I think everyone, right, especially if you're on Instagram in any business, right, everybody's kind of talking about work-life balance and burnout and sustainability in your career. But as far as in veterinary medicine, I experienced burnout a few years ago, which I didn't realize that's what it was at the time. I just thought this is normal because all of my friends feel the same way. Like, this is just what being an equine vet is. Like, you're tired all the time. And like, the phone rings and you get this like dread, this like pit in your stomach. Or, my favorite is like when you hear the emergency ringtone in the grocery store, like on someone else's phone, and you like duck and cover because you're like, like what's going on, right? And like, I thought that was normal. So I actually ended up quitting my job. I took a job at a running shoe store because I had just started running a ton and like racing. And I was like, oh my God, like maybe I should sell running shoes. Maybe I'm not meant to be a veterinarian. Like, that's how burnt out I was. And like, of course, after some time, I realized like, that's not true. I just like needed a break. So I took that break, got back into practice and felt, eons better for, just finding a different job that fit me better and that kind of thing. But as far as where I am now and how I got into it at this point in my career, it was during COVID. I had 3 really good friends who were all also equine veterinarians. And we would do, in COVID, everyone's just like sitting at home in your pajamas. So we would do, Zooms every couple of weeks, just talking, because we were all over the country. And one of the things that we started talking about was like, man, on the equine vet Facebook pages, like it is just a downer, right? Like people are struggling. And like, I'm sure you all see it in other places in the equestrian type industries, right? People are struggling. So we just kind of bounced these ideas back, and we essentially developed a seminar series that we wanted to put on. We were like, we need to get equine vets together in a place where we can talk about all this stuff and troubleshoot and problem solve, because what we were hearing was all these people struggling and or complaining, because some people were just complaining, because sometimes you want to be like, okay, well, if someone calls you at midnight and wants, a tube of bute for their abscess from last week, don't answer the phone. Like that's a simple solution. But sometimes, right, when you're struggling and you're in it, it's really hard to see that or come up with that. So anyway, me and my 3 friends, these other veterinarians, put together this seminar series, the Sustainability in Equine Practice seminar series. And so that's kind of where it came into. So then we all sort of dove in to this entire area of like, how do we help people, number 1, recognize where they are. And then number 2, figure out how to get where they need to be. Yeah. So it was COVID, right?
That's
sitting
awesome.
at home, with wine and your pajamas and your friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right. Because I certainly have really felt burnt out. Before I work at my current position, I worked at a breeding farm. And I've talked about it before on the podcast, where it's almost like for probably at least 3 years after doing it. And it was like, it really burnt me out. And I didn't even know it. Like, I just knew that I felt like awful, and I cried every day, and I didn't know how to get myself out of it. And I didn't know what direction I was going to go. And I didn't even know who to talk to about it. Like, not even my husband. He was just frustrated with me because I was just crying all the time, and he couldn't understand it, and he's like, yes, but you're like the general manager of a farm, and this is so good. And I'm like, I hate it because I feel like I can't do anything else in my life but this. And the PTSD is real too, like for what you were saying about the phone calls, like my phone, I had this air raid siren when mares would foal that would get me up in the middle of the night because I was so terrified that I wouldn't get up. So like any kind of siren like that, to this day, I'm still like, oh, what?
And then you're like, oh, I should have had like a nice calming like bird song, but then you're so tired it would have woken you up.
Exactly. And I would say it probably took me 3 years till I felt, after I left there and I was working where I am now, that like I felt like a real human being, and I didn't feel like half a zombie all the time and not knowing.
And it's hard, right? Because a breeding situation, right? Like the foals come when the foals come. Like there's the ovaries are doing what they're doing. The semen shows up when it shows up. Like these are things that you don't actually have a lot of control over. And that is probably what contributed to so much of your struggle, right? Is just like the lack of being able to plan or control it.
And I would say too, being understaffed contributed because there's not a lot of people who want to do that kind of work and getting up in the middle of the night. And I went from a situation where I was at a farm where we had significant staff, and it wasn't as bad, to being the general manager for a smaller farm with a lot less staff and only 2 other people on the farm, to foal out at night. And being that, I wanted to do a good job, and I was a little bit of a perfectionist. I wanted to be there every time a mare foaled out, and just to say, hey, I know we did it right. I mean, we had some issues with a couple of foals, and, I wanted to be able to say to the owners, no, we did everything. We made the right steps. We called the vets. We did what we had to do.
Yeah. And so perfectionism is a big, it's a really common trait, especially in veterinary medicine, probably in many business owners of any sort of thing. And like, it is definitely correlated with higher levels of stress and burnout, because you don't give yourself that grace or that slack, or it's hard to delegate, or for many of us, I'm sure you did it, right? You delegate something and it doesn't turn out right. So then you're like, well, guess I'm reining this back in.
Yes. That's what my business partner tells me all the time. Like, my biggest flaw is that I always try to do it myself because it's easier, it's faster, it's better, or whatever the reasoning is. And that is, I think, one of the hardest things as a business owner to do is to let go and trust that you have trained somebody else to do it correctly and in your place. And that is extremely difficult to do for a lot of people, myself included. And I know, the veterinary industry is, from what I've heard from people, and we've talked to vets about this on the podcast before, is it's almost at a crisis situation with people leaving the industry, large animal, I should say, and leaving the equine and moving to small animal, or, whether it's the suicide rate for veterinarians that we've talked about before, and programs that have been set up to try and mitigate that. But, obviously we've talked about the hours and maybe the pay not making it worthwhile. What do you think are the biggest contributing factors when it comes to burnout?
So, yeah, I mean, that's a huge question, right? Like, as far as veterinary medicine, as a whole, we have a sustained high level of stress in most practices. Just like if you're a general manager of a breeding farm, like, okay, maybe in October, it's not super stressful, but like, for 8 months a year, there's a lot of just kind of constant stress. In veterinary medicine specifically, and a lot of the data that I'm going to give you comes from the Merck Animal Health Wellbeing Study. They've done 4 of these studies looking at basically the state of the industry, veterinarians, and then this latest one that was published in was done in 2023, looks at veterinary support staff. So technicians, front desk, office managers, and everyone else that's part of the veterinary team. So, and, I don't know, we can link it in the show notes maybe, but it's vetwellbeing.com will take you to all of the data that is out there that has been compiled. And so one of the things that, and some of the stuff I'm going to say, right, it sounds so obvious, but I think it is really important to get actual statistics and numbers, because then you can track it and then you can make actual changes. So one of the things that they found in this study is that people who don't feel that they have enough time to perform high quality medicine and their appointments are rushed are going to be more likely to burn out. And so that goes kind of to what you were saying about being understaffed at the breeding farm, right? So like if you have veterinarians who are understaffed, whether it's not enough veterinarians or not enough support staff, they are still trying to see all of the horses and clients that need to be seen. They don't have enough time to do it. Then they may not feel like they are performing, to the best of their ability or providing the best medicine. And then that is something in veterinary medicine that really, really drags people down. And then another thing, as far as like what contributes to burnout in vet med, besides the fact that it's high stress, we are making life or death decisions for a lot of things, or, the stress of making a decision, not necessarily based on what the best medicine is, but based on the medicine that is available in that case, or the finances that are available in that case. That can be a really challenging thing for veterinarians to deal with. And we talk about it as called a continuum of care. And so one of the things as a veterinarian, and a lot of younger and newer veterinarians, this is a skill that you develop, right? Is learning that, okay, maybe if you're at the vet school, you're going to do A, B, C, D, E, but here we are on the farm, an hour away from a clinic. What is the best thing we can do for this animal that's still going to get a positive result, but it doesn't have to be A, B, C, D, or E, right? Like you don't have to feel bad that every horse you see that blocks to a foot isn't going to go get an MRI on it, right? Like that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We did a really good job before, and that's fine. But I think a lot of people struggle because we do learn all of these really amazing things, but all of those amazing things aren't necessarily the best solution for every client. And that can be draining and lead to some of that stress and burnout. And then one of the other things, and I know you alluded to this as well, but working after hours, working overnights, working weekends, and not having that I am not at work and I can turn my brain off time, that's what's doing it in the industry, right? Is like the people who let's think about the solo practitioner who's got a 2-hour practice radius and is always on call for something that may go wrong. Like that person is at a much higher risk of burnout than somebody, for example, in a small animal clinic that closes their doors at 5 o'clock. And then on the weekends, those cases go to the local referral ER center and they're done with it.
Yeah. And I think that applies to that. It's totally relatable as a small business owner, especially in the equestrian industry, because horse shows are on the weekends. We work on the weekends, and when I did the Winter Equestrian Festival, I did all the PR and marketing. I worked 7 days a week for 13 weeks straight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not life or death situations, but it's just constant. And it's always being on. It's always, never having a full day to yourself
Mm-hmm.
and rushing to get your errands done because you have less other work due. And it's, it's hard in this industry. And Jen and I, we've talked before, horses are 24/7 and
Mm-hmm.
they never get sick or hurt themselves at a convenient time. And, I think that is something to think about especially if you're young and you want to get into the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's all these stories and articles about Gen Z and how they, are standing up for their own time and their PTO and all of that. And that's all well and good. But if you are coming into this industry, it doesn't really work that way, at least not yet. I don't think we've found the solutions to work around, being able to take a couple vacations a year and still being able to work with horses.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're extremely lucky,
And I think about it.
If you find the right job,
Yeah. And I mean, but you just have to think about it too, across all different industries. I was just looking at hay with my husband, and those guys, they're out there at 8-9 o'clock putting up hay because there might be a rainstorm coming through, or,
right.
With animals, I think it's just so it's different, but I do think it applies to everybody in the equine industry, whether you have a tech-based business or a tack shop. I mean, I have some people I'm talking to this weekend who they're at a horse show and they're real busy, and they might get Monday off, but then they're on the move to the next show. So I think it applies throughout our entire industry.
Right.
I mean, I think something that we had already touched on it, but the delegation and having a team.
Yes.
Depending on where you are, right? If you're a trainer, you need to ideally, right, be able to trust maybe your grooms or your barn guys who are there on the day that you're not there, and know that okay, they're going to call me if there's something wrong. That would be one example, or, but it is really hard when you're a small business because you may not have that team.
Yes.
But delegating as best as you can is something to strive for when it is available, for sure.
Yeah. And Jen, was it Dinah that we talked to? But we spoke with some female veterinarians who were solo practitioners, and they were trying the same thing that kind of you had with your colleagues, of trying to find a way to make it easier for everyone. Mm-hmm. And they kind of banded together as solo practitioners to say, I'll take these nights, and and you can have them off, or, they all trusted each other enough and knew that everyone was qualified enough. And they told their clients, look, I will not be on call. My phone will be turned off and you will get this other vet that will come help you in an emergency, and kind of working to help each other. And I think that's where we need to move in this industry, like you said, of finding a team and finding people that you trust, that you can say, I'm not going to be here, I'm going to delegate this. And they don't have to be necessarily working for you. It could just be a colleague in the industry, like trainers. If there's a trainer down the road and you can cover their barn for 5 days while they go on vacation, That's huge. And I think that's what more people need to be talking about, and is how to recognize that and start talking more about it.
I think that's a good point. And, you know, the more people do it, the more common it will become, right? But
Yeah.
it takes little steps, but, and the veterinarians that are doing it, I think it's really awesome. And part of that is training the clients, right? And it would be the same for a horse
Mhm.
trainer, right? You're like, hey, I'm away. You guys are going to hack this week. If you've got a problem, the other trainers in the other shed row or whatever, but,
Right.
but
Yeah.
the trust that you mentioned is so important, trusting that that person that you bring in is, going to turn that client back over to you when you get
Yes.
back from your call.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it, I think.
Yeah.
We need to be better people within the industry to hold ourselves to that standard of doing business well and not looking to steal each other's clients and stuff,
Right.
and picking those people that you can trust that way.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I know you mentioned a couple of signs of burnout, like being tired, but can you kind of talk a little bit more about signs and how people can look for them and evaluate themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that there's actually 4 different types of burnout, which is interesting because I did not know that until recently.
Oh, yeah.
But there's
I didn't know.
exhaustion. Yeah, right. Like I didn't know either. Exhaustion. And I think that's what we all think of kind of as all encompassing, right? You're tired all the time, tired of answering the phone, tired of talking to people, tired physically. But you've also got mental distance, cognitive impairment, and emotional impairment. And so these are all really interesting because I'll list a couple of the signs. And then I think, Jen, it would be really interesting for you to look back when you were, at the breeding farm and feeling burnt out and kind of see what you actually were feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But, so exhaustion, you can be mentally and physically exhausted, or like, great, you come home at 5:00, but you just can't do anything, right? You're like, I do not have the energy to open the refrigerator, and you just have to DoorDash whatever because you just can't. For that emotional exhaustion, that's when people are going to just like not feel motivated, or they're going to be kind of cynical, and I remember feeling that when I was experiencing burnout, like, someone would call and I would roll my eyes and just be like, oh, why is this person calling me? Like, they shouldn't even have a horse. That is a horrible,
Yes.
but that's horrible, right? That is an awful, awful thing. But that's where I was, right? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
and that's, I can say it out loud now, but like, it's still embarrassing, right? That is where my brain took me, like cynicism, that irritability. A lot of people, when they're feeling emotionally burnt out at work, especially in a place, they're just going to feel underappreciated, right? So like, you feel like you're doing all this stuff and like no one cares. And then you just don't feel satisfied with your job. Like you were kind of saying, Jen, you're like, why am I even doing this? Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Physically, right? Physical signs of burnout, obviously you're tired all the time, or maybe you're so tired, but then you can't sleep. You've got insomnia, you've got anxiety. Your brain is just like constantly running, which I'm sure happens probably to most people listening to this podcast, like on a normal day, right? You lay down and your brain is like, wait a second, did you put the laundry in the dryer? Like, did you pack lunch for the kids? Like, is there a soccer game? Like, whatever else you have going on.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize this was a sign of burnout when I had it, but I had stomach pain every single morning. I would eat breakfast and get ready to go to work, and I had sharp pain in my stomach.
Wow.
So like, I had thought I was allergic to eggs, so I didn't eat eggs for like 3 years because I was like, I eat eggs every day and my stomach hurts. Well, no, actually I was having a physical manifestation of like my stress and burnout. And then that behavioral burnout, this is the kind of thing that I think a lot of, especially women who tend to be the people in a household doing all the other things as well as running their business or doing their job, difficulty concentrating, forgetting stuff, just like having a hard time getting started. Like, where do I start with all of these things that I have to do? And then you just maybe sit there because you're like, I don't even know where to go. Right.
Yeah.
So any one of those things can be a sign of burnout. And just because you have one doesn't mean you're burnt out, but it maybe is something to pay attention to. Right. Especially if it's a change from how you've been feeling.
Yep. That makes sense. And so once you've recognized the burnout and you see symptoms, what are some ways to mitigate it? A lot of people, I think, and maybe one of the key things about burnout is they feel like you said they can't change anything, or they're not willing to change anything, or they say, I'm stuck here. I can't do it. Anything else. I'm not qualified to do another job, or horses are all I know. And I know Jen has talked to friends of hers who want to get out of the horse industry. And she said, you have so many skills that you don't even realize that you've used in the industry that completely translate to another type of job outside of horses. And so looking at that, how do people kind of change the situation they're in and try and either lessen or get rid of it altogether?
Yeah, that's a really big question, right? Like a really big question. And I think the key is to, and of course, right, like take the time, right? No one has time. That's why we're all burnt out. But try and really think about what it is that is causing you those feelings, right? So like, great, I'm an equine veterinarian. I'm really busy. I'm feeling burnt out. Okay, but what is it that is making you feel that way? Or alternatively, maybe look at your day and say, what makes me feel energized or joyful? And then maybe you can find those things that aren't sitting really well with you, and maybe you can edit those in a little bit, right? So I have a trainer that I work with who was, in charge of all of the show horses, all of the lesson horses, managing the barn, right? So ordering shavings, ordering hay, managing the grooms, managing the stall guys, all of this stuff, like too much, right? And so she was ready to just like be done. She's like, I'm moving to Tahiti. Don't call me. See you later, right? And so what she realized is she was like, I love the horses. I love the teaching. I love the program. What I do not love is managing the barn and doing all of that. So she was able to figure out that that is what was sucking out her soul, and then negotiate, a way to try and get that duty onto someone else. And so I think that translates to anybody, right? Like if you're a veterinarian and there is, a certain type of appointment that you just never feel ready for, or you never feel satisfied doing it, like maybe you don't have to do that procedure, right? Like, for me, it's castrations. Like I hate them. Like,
I would too.
Yeah. Like, first of all, they're barbaric. I'm like, it's 2024. Like we haven't figured out a better way to do this.
Right.
Yeah. And then I swear, you're like anesthetizing this horse. Like, is it going to wake up? Is it going to go to sleep? Is it going to just like punch you in the face? Like, it's just too much for me. Right. So like, I decided, you know what? I'm not going to do these in the field. If I'm going to do a castration, it's coming to the clinic. We're going to drop it in the drop stall so that, it's got a catheter in. If I need it to stay sleeping because I'm struggling, I can, keep it asleep for a few minutes longer. If I need help, there's a technician. And that was a way for me to manage something that was causing me issues and still get it done. I mean, I still didn't love it, but it made it a lot better. So I guess my challenge to anybody listening would be try and take that time and figure out what it is, because it's not all of it, right? I mean, Jen, when you were in that position, right? As you're listening to this, can you think about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I definitely think that managing people was difficult for me because I'm a people pleaser, right? So it was very hard for me to get firm with employees. And I will say I had some very good employees and then I had some bad employees, and the bad employees really ruined it for me. So right, like the great employees, you love working with them and you're fine if you have to do a little extra, but it's the bad employees who just ruin it. You ruin your perspective on it and managing people. So I really didn't like that. And I liked doing some of the marketing stuff, but I wasn't necessarily crazy about mucking stalls when somebody didn't show up for work. I didn't feel like that was a great use of time, but it had to get done. So, it was really hard. And as a people pleaser, I didn't want to make anybody do too much, like I always felt like I wanted to be fair. Yeah. And then I would take it on myself to do it.
That's
and
exactly
then
what I do. Yep. That's what I do. Oh, you wanted this day off? Okay, take it off. I'll handle your work.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm not regret it, but I resent it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had employees where they would call up and they'd be like, oh, I can't come on Sunday. And I'm like, you're literally like one of two people that are coming on a Sunday because I want to give everybody a day off. And, I'm not making you work 7 days. And I would have to drive to pick him up because he'd be like, I didn't have a ride, or, my brother isn't working today, so I can't come. And I'm like, this isn't work. This is not working for me, guys. And it's just so hard to find people who want to work at that pay point
Yeah.
on the
Yes.
farm. And, so I found that very difficult. And I think that contributed to my burnout and, wanting to be perfect. And I was getting up myself in the middle of the night to give medications to make sure it was getting done on babies and stuff like that, where I had staff and I probably should have asked them, and we should have made rotations. But looking back at it, I didn't think that was a solution. Like like you said, you get in it so deep that you can't even think about it. I've learned now. We had Dr. Darby Bonomi on like our first episode, and I've done some work with her personally, and she has helped me tremendously with that. Hey, pull it back, look from 30,000 foot, 10,000 feet, and not right on top of the problem. And that has helped me so much. Like you have to back away. Like you said, your feelings. I think that's so important to like, you're feeling this, but why? And pick it apart and back it out until you're so far away from it that you actually figure out what it is that's causing you.
And then, you can always also do the thing, right? I mean, I feel like we're all supposed to do this. What would you tell your best friend if they came to you with that problem? Right? Like you certainly wouldn't tell your best friend, oh, well, you have to go on Sunday and pick up this guy and bring him to work so you guys can muck stalls together. Like your best friend would never tell you that. Your best friend would be like, hey, what about a schedule or whatever? Right. So like, we all are so much harder on ourselves than we would be, to our people. So trying to flip that, which again, really easy to say sitting here, recording this, much harder to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does make sense.
I think also when you're talking about the control that you want to have of your life, and you, like Jen, when you were in that situation, okay, you were the breeding manager, but you were not the boss. You didn't own the place. You couldn't decide probably what to pay the guys or how many people you could hire.
So
and
you're,
I feel for employees in that way because they are stuck at the whims of the people who make the overall decisions. And I think, that is part of it, and different between employees and employers. But do you think burnout applies the same way to no matter what position you're in?
I mean, I think everybody in any position can, fall into a pattern of burnout. I think it just looks different, right? So like maybe your business owner is the person who's not falling asleep because they're thinking about hay deliveries and shavings deliveries and like, the muck guy didn't come pick up the dump truck and now, that kind of stuff. And then you've got people like Jen who were like, I'm trying to get these babies on the ground and manage these people who aren't there. So I think part of it is maybe having compassion for everyone else on your team and knowing that like they may also be having a little bit of, it may look different, but a little bit of the same kind of struggle.
Right.
Yeah. And as an employee, how do you think that they can approach this with their employers? Like what kind of advice can you give them if they are feeling burned out? Like what's that conversation look like?
That's a great question. And I think the keys to, number one, we already kind of talked about, like dig in and find out exactly what it is. You know what I mean? Like what is something specific, right? Not just like, ugh, I'm so overwhelmed and burnt out, I don't want to do this anymore. But I'm so overwhelmed and burnt out because I feel overscheduled and I can't, provide medicine at the level that I want because I have too many appointments. Okay, great. You figured that out. Come to your employer and say, hey, this is a real struggle for me, but can we try this so that I can try and do a better job but our clients will still get seen, and present a solution, I think is always
definitely
right. I mean, no matter what your business, like literally no one wants to hear you complain if you do not have a plan
Right.
try and amend it. And like the plan may not work, or your employer may not want to hear it, your employer, whatever the case, but you gotta at least have a solution. Cause like,
Yeah.
I mean, we all know, we've all been in places where you have that person and you're like, oh, here comes Debbie Downer,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like, hey, how about have the solution, or two, if this isn't going to work this way, or negotiate. Give
Right.
me 2 weeks to try this. Or I listen to Tim Ferriss a lot, and he's big on the negotiation where he's, come with the solution, or come with, hey, can I try this for one day a month that I take Thursdays off? And then, if that's working and things are getting done and I'm doing my work great, then maybe I ask for two, and, just continue to see how it goes. And like, I don't think you can necessarily look at it as like pushing the limits, but like, let's try and make this work for both of us and in the right way.
And I think, as someone, I've been an associate veterinarian at, a bunch of different practices. I do own my own business, but I do relief work and chiropractic, and I work for myself. So like, I'm the problem, right? If there's a problem. But I think trying to be slightly compassionate with the business owner or your boss is important, because, what's happening to you is very important to you, because that is your world and your thing. Right. But again, they are, a level or two potentially up, trying to manage, 12 different fires, not just yours. So I think your point about, come with a solution, let's try it, let's put some deadlines on it, is really important, because your employer, I guarantee, is probably going to be like, oh, wow, this person has really thought about the impact that this may have. And that may make it a lot easier to try and do that change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I had Jen add this question, as an employer, what are appropriate ways to respond to your employees' requests? Because, as a small business owner, I've had people approach me and just say, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice, this doesn't work anymore. And I'm like, but you haven't even talked to me. You haven't even told me what the issue is. We haven't even tried to work it out. Like I think there are very few things that are reasonable grounds for quitting without even discussing what the issue is, like, I don't know. Obviously I liked you enough to keep you on. I didn't fire you. Like, things weren't that bad. So if you thought things were that bad, why did you never even tell me? And so, looking at that, and I think there are different types of employers, and you can probably recognize what type of person you're working for. There's people like me who are, or who try very hard to be sympathetic, or empathetic to what you're going through, or, recognize issues and solve them before it becomes to a point where you want to quit.
Yeah.
But, are there suggestions on how to be fair, but then protect your business too?
Yeah. So something I do want to bring up that doesn't exactly answer your question, but about what you were talking about, being blindsided by somebody putting in their 2 weeks notice, because they're unhappy. Something that the AAEP, so the American Association of Equine Practitioners, has been diving full force into, equine medicine, trying to make it more sustainable. How do we keep our profession afloat? Because there's not enough doctors, there's too many horses. How do we keep people working and maintaining their mental health? And one of the things that has come out of that is a lot of discussion about practice culture. So the culture of your workplace, does it feel like a safe place, right? So like when people come to you and say, hey, Jen, I'm really struggling with XYZ. Can we talk about it? Is that person, are you looking at them in the eye and saying, I hear you, and yes, we can set a time to talk about it? Or are you totally busy and they don't feel like they're heard, right? So something about feeling safe to have those conversations. But one of the things that's come out of a lot of those discussions that I think would fit in any sort of industry at all is what's called a stay interview. So instead of, only checking in once a year and being like, hey, how's it going? Your yearly review, you're going to get $1 raise or whatever it is. Conduct stay interviews throughout somebody's tenure, right? Whether that's quarterly or biannually, whatever works for you. And just say like, how do you think things are going? Do you have any ideas on how, anything that you think we could change or how we could do it, and check in with people. Not to say to force them, but, to give that opportunity, because, some people, right, especially in a lot of the part of the equine industry, like, people may be working for you as their first, real job, right? And they've never really had that opportunity, and they may not know, but giving that time and that opportunity for people to have that conversation beforehand is something that I think anybody could apply that to their business. And that may be something, to be helpful. I don't know. Right. Do you think that
definitely
in that case, maybe not for everyone?
Yeah. And that's something we've implemented it in my business, our quarterly reviews. And it's not necessarily to go over your work product. It's to go over how you're feeling. And we have tried to make it easier for employees to come to us and say what's working and what's not for them. And there are some things where, like, I'm sorry, that's a no-go.
Right.
But, can we try this instead? And I think employers need to, just like employees need to bring solutions to the table, I think employers kind of need to think ahead and maybe anticipate issues. If you are a trainer and you're going into indoor season, like, does every assistant trainer have to suffer through indoors and go to every show? Probably, maybe not, because, you only had a certain amount of people qualify for one of them. So could they switch off and not have to go to everyone and be able to stay home and have somewhat normal hours? That's just an example. But, I think employers also need to be thinking ahead for solutions as to how to better manage and support their employees.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think that can be tough, because you are, like we've said, have so many other things going on and so many other fires that you're trying to put out. Is, taking the time to sit down. I think it's important, but I think that's probably something that, thinking back to my time at the farm, I didn't do. I was just running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to get everything done that needed to get done. And, I would be mad because my employees might fight sometimes amongst each other, and I'd be like, what is this? Like, I have this 19-year-old girl working for me, and she's really working her butt off, but why are you adults picking on her for something I told her to do? Like, if you have a problem, come to me. And so I just remember, like, not being able to, like, sit down and think through, okay, like, how am I going to prevent these people? Like, what do I need to do to prevent these people from just, like, upping and quitting because of culture? Like, I need to figure this out. And when you're in the thick of it, you're just, like, trying to take the fire hose and put everything out.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, it goes both ways, of employers trying to realize they can't ask the moon from their employees constantly, and employees reminding themselves that their employers are doing more than just checking that they finished their work.
Yeah.
We've said this, like, my business partner and I are like, you really have no idea what it's like running a business until you try and do it yourself. And there's so many moving parts to it that, as an employee, you probably never even thought of. Like,
yes, absolutely.
So it goes both ways.
Totally. I mean, one of the examples in veterinary medicine that I think is really simple and really powerful is, like, okay, we get on everybody about, make sure you bill for anything you dispense, right? Like, you handed a tube of Banamine out to somebody, you have to bill for it. If somebody doesn't understand, the reason you have to bill for it is because we've already paid for it, right? In order for it to be on the veterinary truck, the practice has already bought it. So if we do not bill for it, we are losing money.
Right.
And, like, sometimes, I'm not saying that everybody needs to know all details of everything, but sometimes there are people with different communication styles and things like that may do better if they understand the why, right? Oh, there's a foot bath in front of all these stalls, in the foaling barn, but I don't want to get my shoes wet. Who cares? No. This is why this is important. And sometimes, again, in certain situations that may be enough for some people to then have it click. Like you're not just harassing them about whatever it is, but there is a reason.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been in situations where a business has waited months to bill out because they didn't have enough time. And then like I've had to in turn bill out to the owners, and that horse might not still be in the barn or on the farm or anything like that.
Or like the horse passed away or something, and then you're sending this bill 3 months later. It's awful.
Yeah, it's awful. So and like some businesses don't understand that their timeliness is important to you doing business with them and continuing going forward, So I've definitely had that situation.
And I think the horse industry, right, as a whole, for centuries has not been great at that, right? Like everybody sends you a bill, and then, at the end of the year, you're like, oh, I owe my farrier, $4,000, oops, or whatever, right? And I think that's a shift every single person in the industry can work toward, right? Like, here's your bill, you need to pay it, right? Like
proper
you don't
business practices.
Yes. Yeah, like you don't go get an oil change or go, to Walmart and not pay your bill.
Right.
Yes. The plumber shows up at your house. He won't even show up unless you pay him before he comes, right? Like,
right.
Most people need to get better.
Yes. Or how about I give a trainer a check and they don't cash it for 6 months, and then all of a sudden the check goes through, and you're like, oh my God, I wasn't even thinking that it hadn't gone through yet.
Yeah, and then you're like, I guess you didn't need that money, because if someone gives me a check, I'm doing it right now.
Like, absolutely. Cara, it was so great talking to you today. We really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I think it's really important, and I think that our listeners are going to get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, I could talk for another hour about it, frankly, and all the different aspects of it.
Yeah, we could dig into any one of those and just keep going for sure.
Yeah, we should have a series with you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But unfortunately, we have to wrap up for today. And at the end of each episode, we ask the guests the same 4 questions, and Connor starts with the first.
What is one action that women can take to make a big difference in their lives?
Nurturing your friendships and your relationships, even when you feel like you are just covered up and swamped and it feels hard, is really important. So, in the midst of the breeding season, send your best friend a meme on Instagram, and then at least they know signs of life, and then they'll send you a meme back and it'll feel better, right? But I think none of us, even if you feel really alone with what you're doing, you need your people. So like take the time to just, little nuggets of friendship can really keep you going.
That's really good.
Yeah, I love that. What is the best habit that keeps you motivated personally?
So for me personally, and this might be because I'm a psychopath, but like I have to move every single day. So do I go for a run? Do I go for a bike ride? Do I go to the gym? Do I get on a call and walk around the block while I'm on it? But like physical activity is what keeps my brain quiet.
Yep. We've had a lot of people say exercise is definitely what keeps them going.
Yep. What's your favorite horse movie, if you have one?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So do y'all remember that movie when we were kids, Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken?
Yes.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
I literally was like, I bet it. Wild Hearts.
Yeah. I don't know. Like now, I don't know that I would want to watch that movie.
Right.
No.
Like now, I definitely prefer like Parks and Rec, like Little Sebastian, that whole storyline. Did you guys ever watch that show?
Okay. I have not.
They ended up with this like mini horse, and it's like totally ridiculous. So like that's more my style now. But yeah, when I was a kid, I would watch Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken over and over, like at every sleepover.
Yes.
Yep.
And who would you recommend to be a future guest on this podcast?
I actually have two for you. One of them came to me while we were having this conversation because I think she could dig in on some of the stuff we talked about way, way more. So that would be Dr. Christine Staten, and she's a veterinarian and an MBA out of Tucson, Arizona at Adobe Vet Center. And her passion is practice culture, healthy teams. She's got some really interesting tier-based compensation for her employees so they can kind of choose their own adventure as far as their growth in the practice. So that could be a really interesting chat, especially for the equine industry.
Yeah.
And the other one is my very good friend, Dr. Stacy Cordovano. She's a practice owner at Clay Creek Equine in Pennsylvania. She's a mom. She's a creative. She has her own podcast called The Whole Veterinarian. And she basically came to that by working through her own burnout to give back to our industry. And she's done a lot of really, really interesting deep dives into some stuff like self-compassion for business owners and a lot of things that I think could be really important for your listeners.
Awesome.
I love that. Thank you.
They're great, both of them. Awesome.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. It was, I think, enlightening and informational, but also so relatable. Even though what you originally set out to do was for veterinarians, I think it totally applies across the board. And even just telling us like there are 4 different kinds of burnout that is something to recognize in yourself if you're listening.
Yeah, agreed. I think, the equine industry is special and awesome, but it's also really hard in a lot of ways. So I'm happy to be here, and hopefully people got some good nuggets out of this episode.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Tired of searching multiple websites for equestrian products and services? Wish you could browse horses for sale and order supplements in one convenient place? Equivant was created by horse girls who are dedicated to making it easy for fellow equestrians to find what they need for them and their horses.
Equivant partners with small equestrian businesses to advertise products, services, and horses for sale on one convenient marketplace. Shop on equivant.com to find horses for sale, grooming products, supplements, riding apparel, trainers and vets in your area, and much more. They really do have everything you need for you and your horse.
I love talking to Cara today.
She's cool.
She's so cool. And I had heard her speak at this vet meeting, and I was like, I went right up to her after she was finished speaking, and I said, I need to have you on our podcast because this is such a hot topic. It's a good topic. It's very relatable to all parts of the equine industry, and we need to have you on. And she said, okay. So we finally made it happen.
That's awesome. Yeah. I know you talked to me about her and that you wanted to have her on. So I am really glad that we got to talk to her and, hear what she discusses in her seminars and be able to have some takeaway ideas for people, both employees and employers, because I'm sure we have both listening. I mean, I know we have small business owners, but we also have people who don't have control over their entire job and everything that they do. So it's good to hear more about that.
Yes. And I love that she was able to come with some statistics and that there are groups that are looking into this. And even though it's very
that was cool.
Vet specific, it got me thinking how maybe the industry needs to look at some of these other parts, like as grooms, as trainers, and looking at what turnover is and what it looks like and why, because that might help us in the future to mold the industry and do better for the people in it, but also the horses.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you've got people working for you that are so burned out that they don't care what they're doing, they're not putting the effort in, they're not paying attention, like, is that what's best for your horses? Do you want those people being the ones who need to come to you when something's wrong? I mean,
right.
So, I think some kind of recognition and moving towards a better place is important.
Yeah, I like to see that the vet industry is doing it already. So
hmm But I do think they did get to a point where it became a crisis, right? I mean,
yes.
I think they only started really leaning into it because of the huge numbers of people leaving large animal veterinary practice, and like you said, the suicide rate and really awful things that people were going through.
Right.
To have them say, "Oh, wait, this isn't sustainable anymore," you know? And I one thing that she said that I was like, "Ooh, no one's ever really said that before." She said, with the number of horses now in the country and the number of vets, it's way out of proportion.
Yes.
Basically, like, and I didn't think about that before. And, you know, I've talked with friends, and anecdotally, we always in the industry are saying, I can't believe how big horse shows are. I can't believe there's as many horse shows that there are. Like in the winter, how many big circuits there are, how many thousands of people there are showing. Every person, not every person, but a lot of them have multiple horses. Like, it was not like that when you and I grew up riding.
No, there were seasons. People had off time. You know,
Yeah.
they didn't go all year long. And also I don't think it's only the disproportion in the vet part of it. I look at the number of horses grooms have to take care of.
Yeah.
Like on the racetrack and in a barn now, you do not have that many people taking care of horses. There are these super barns out there that people are taking care of 5, 6, maybe 8 horses. That's a lot of horses for somebody to have to look after every single day and make sure that they're getting taken care of. So I think that we see it in vet medicine because it is so significant, but I do think it's trickling into other parts of the industry as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, you know, the thing that the other part that always gets mentioned is how expensive the sport is, especially if you're looking at kind of the English hunt seat sports, the Olympic disciplines, and how so many people are getting priced out of being able to compete. And, right, this is part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It is, because the expense just keeps going up, but I don't know that it's necessarily always trickling down.
Exactly. I mean, who is making all that money? Because it's not the grooms. I don't, not that I know of. I mean, there are some barns that treat them very well and give them proper compensation, but it is difficult.
Yeah, I think we're going to start seeing potentially a little more of a crisis mode throughout the entire industry, whether it's racing to show jumping to Western pleasure. If we don't start looking at the sustainability of jobs in the industry. I mean, gosh, I've heard stories about the guys who hold the thoroughbreds in the gate. I forget, they have a name, all them, but anyway, those guys that are like stewards holding the horses in the gates, their job span is not that long because it's very, very tough on them.
I can imagine. I mean, the physicality and like getting out of the way of the horses, crouching at the top and not getting killed multiple times a day. That's a really high stress job, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I think that there's a lot of things in the industry that we don't think about that are high stress and very physical. And as a population that's in it, like as grooms get older and we don't have a lot of younger people that find it appealing to come in, or they don't last particularly long, and they burn out quickly. I think it's something we need to look at for sure. And I did like to, when you were talking about the people quitting, because I think that happens a lot. Like, I know I was working at the farm. There were guys who just up and quit. They didn't show up. They don't show up for work. They're like, just not coming, and you're like, you couldn't even give me a week, 2 weeks, 3 days. Like, you just are quitting. And it's very frustrating. But I have to say, one of my first jobs that I had, I did exactly that. And I was feeling underappreciated and I was resentful of the job. And I like burnt the bridge. And it was like, I left a note and was like, don't contact me ever again. And I think I've told that story before, but
God.
like, I think some of it is like immaturity that was definitely
Absolutely.
immaturity on my part, and not having the skills to ask what I wanted or express that. I think that that's something that a lot of people like lack coming out of school, or
Yes.
if you don't have a lot of experience in jobs, you don't know how to change. You don't even know if it's a possibility for it to change.
Exactly. And they don't teach you in school the proper communication skills, like you said, about negotiation, or, understanding what you're worth, or coming up with solutions to problems, like those real world things that make jobs so difficult and stressful. You aren't taught about. You kind of have to learn it along the way, or hope that you work with somebody, or you work for somebody who teaches you those skills. But that's what I've seen with so many people, is like, they can't even properly address a problem, and they would rather ignore it and quit, even though they had a good situation going. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yep.
If I was like, you're throwing that away because you can't even approach your boss to talk about it.
Right. Right.
And there was a solution. Like, we could have worked out a solution, but nope. Okay,
Right.
bye.
Yeah. And I know, it's hard because you don't see it coming, and you don't even know how to like teach those people that they need to communicate in this way. Right. Because you don't know that they're coming in without those skills. It's
right. Yeah.
So.
Like, they may have really good communication skills when it comes to selling themselves, or, being able to do the job and work with colleagues. But, if you don't know how to talk to your boss, it's a problem. And people need to learn how to do that. And, if we're talking about burnout, communication is one of the key things that you have to have in order to avoid that, or to even get out of it.
Yeah. And to problem solve so that you can present it both ways, right? You have to be able to give your employer an opportunity to say no, or yes, right? Like, you have to come to them with it. And that's why I just love this whole conversation, because it really,
it leads to so many other places. Yeah, it's a good lesson.
Absolutely.
And it takes you down the road of saying, "Oh, what about this? Oh, what about this?" Like, now we're talking about communication skills when we were talking about burnout, but it all works together. It's all part of the bigger picture. And in trying to, provide information for people like we do in the podcast, and a lot of times, like, we talk about topics because it's stuff we want to know about or we want help with.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or like for me, that like her talk hit me because I was like, oh my God, I needed this back when I was at the farm.
Yeah.
I needed
and you
to
can
hear
recognize that you were in that situation.
Yes. And I'm like, oh man, we need to get her on, because this could help somebody else and prevent them from ending up in my situation.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really cool. And I just am thankful that we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm excited about some of the guests that she recommended, because hopefully we can get them on, because those are other topics that I think will be amazing as well. So I'm going to do some work on that.
So this episode will come out at the beginning of July, and you and I are getting back together in Saratoga for the Saratoga Women in Business Spectacular Horse Show. This will be our 3rd year there. Really excited for it. It's July 10th through the 14th. And not only is the show completely run and staffed and everybody there is women in all of the job positions at the horse show, but we are going to have a really cool vendor market on Friday afternoon into the evening with the Hunter Derby. And so if you are an equestrian vendor or a local to the area vendor and you want to come out to the horse show and share what you do with people, we'd love to have you. So reach out to us and find more information.
Yeah, I have quite a few people that are interested. I've been working on it. It's super exciting. I'm also really excited about doing a stick pony egg and spoon race. And we're going to have Jessica Paquette, who is the female announcer. She's going to call the race. So we've got some really fun things, ice cream social, breakfast on Saturday morning where you can learn some more about some pharmaceuticals. So super excited about it. Can't wait. I am in the middle of planning it. So we're going to end today, and you can find the links to today's guests and the show notes at www.eqbusinesswomen.com. Equestrian B2B is out twice a month on the 1st and the 15th.
You can find out more at eqbusinesswomen.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Find Equestrian B2B wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. You can have all 20 plus shows of the Horse Radio Network with you wherever you go with their free app for iPhone and Android. Go to your app store and search Horse Radio Network.
Now go find ways to mitigate burnout.